Hi, greetings. I'm Robbie Warren, Otter Woman Standing, and hey, today let's talk a little bit about ancestral healing and ancestral clearing. This is really coming up a lot lately. More recently, I'm seeing a lot of talk about it, and it is a practice that really has been done for, I don't know, forever. As long as there have been medicine people and shamans, we have been doing ancestral healing and ancestral clearing work. And, you know, the beautiful part about all of this is that science is finally catching up to us. And the scientific part of this, some of you may have heard, is called or referred to as epigenetics. Epigenetics. And it is studying the effect that trauma has on our bodies and how that gets passed down generational. So that is epigenetics in a nutshell. And that's about as scientific as I'm going to get today. So you can look up epigenetics and you can see some of these studies and see what they're talking about. But as a medicine person, as a shaman, you know, I have been taught how to deal with ancestral trauma, ancestral baggage that our ancestors picked up and that has now been passed down through our DNA. So, science is proving that this is happening. And, you know, we can see this. We can see generationally how this affects one generation after another. And many people in medicine work and, in the shamanic practices recognize that we can work backwards 7 generations, and the healing work that we do that goes back 7 generations also carries forward 7 generations. So when we do this healing work, ancestral healing and ancestral clearing work, what we are doing is going back at least 7 generations to look for that trauma that is showing up in the DNA, find that ancestor, and do the healing work for that ancestor. And then in doing that, it will energetically reweave the DNA coming back to the person that I'm working for, that's in front of me for healing, and it will move forward in their DNA, so it will be cleared forward for 7 generations. So ancestral healing, ancestral trauma, and healing, working with the ancestors is quite powerful. And, you know, oftentimes our ancestors have experienced what I would call a generational trauma. And if you look back over our human history, you can see where these generational traumas would come in. Anyone who is descended from a European Jew who lived in Europe, obviously a European Jew, but lived in Europe during the 1930s and 40s, would have experienced a trauma that happened through that whole generation. You know, through everyone who was living there at that time, experienced some trauma to one degree or another, whether it was a fear of being caught or rounded up or put into the camps, or whether it was actually being put into the camps, whether it was being, I can't even fathom the depth of the trauma that would come from something like that. And throughout human history, we have that. But when we look back through the last 7 generations, we can see these generational traumas, and, you know, because we know enough about history, we can look and see where these traumas would show up that would be what I would call that generational trauma. But there are other traumas that show up, the traumas that we don't know about, that aren't talked about in our family tree, that are not spoken about. You know, the traumas of losing a child, of trauma of personal betrayal, trauma of unexpected death, you know, or witnessing a death, or even witnessing something that was never even spoken about. So oftentimes the ancestral healing that I do is about these small, you know, if there is such a thing as a small trauma, but about these small blips that happen in a lifetime that can change our DNA, that can change who we are and how we are in the world. So this is a lot of the ancestral work that I do. So the beauty of doing ancestral work is that the person who comes to me for ancestral healing and clearing, I use their energy as a catalyst for me to be able to move through the other dimensions, the other lifetimes, the other realms, you know, and to meet their ancestors, to experience their ancestors. And it is amazing how quickly our ancestors want to come forward. that energy of them wants to come forward when they know that their descendant is willing to hold the space for their healing. So actually the work that I do is energetically on the ancestor. So the ancestor may say to me, the great-great-great-great-grandmother may express to me what her trauma was, what she experienced, and then I can do the healing work on her energetically to heal that trauma, to bring pieces of her soul back, whatever the work is that needs to be done. And it is amazing. It looks like a lightning bolt down through the DNA from that ancestor down to my client. So, and then, if my client has children, then it moves forward. So it is beautiful, beautiful work. It is deep work. And it is done in the other realms, in the other dimensions. And again, you all, if you listen to any of my videos, you know that I talk often about not re-traumatizing the person who's sitting in front of me. So my client does not relive the trauma. They don't relive it. They may feel a little bit of emotion when I do the work, but they do not relive the trauma. It does not come back into their lives. And it can change how my client expresses themselves in the world. They may feel more confident. They may feel stronger. They may find that they are, my client may become calm. They may become clear. They may be able to let go of anger that they were holding, that they didn't know why they were holding the anger. They might be able to let go of fears that have been coming up for them, that they had no idea where these fears were coming from. And each generation, when trauma is passed down through the DNA, each generation may express it differently. Oftentimes I find that it shows up in some form of addiction, one way or another, whether it's alcoholism or drug addiction or food addiction or rage addiction, things like that. And each generation may express it differently. So I may actually start with my client and trace back through their DNA from my client to their mother's, their mother and mother's mother and father's father's mother. It can go back. And, in an infinite number of ways to do this healing work. So ancestral healing is really quite a powerful thing. It is a beautiful, beautiful process. And it is so empowering to know that your ancestors are coming forward for them to be healed because they want to change. Their energy wants to change how you are in the world. So you come and offer healing for them, and they in turn step forward to offer healing for you. So it is really such a beautiful, beautiful process. So ancestral healing, epigenetics. Take a quick Google search and see what you think. All right, I hope to see you soon.